Hello, this is Dazzling One, and this week I'll be covering a few events that have taken place over the past month, and I'll be leaving links in the description box to the articles that I'll be reading from. So, starting with news and science, there is the potential discovery of particle X. For months, physicists have been quietly freaking out over tantalizing evidence of a brand new particle lying outside the standard model of physics, first seen as a blip in Large Hadron Collider data. The hunt is now on to confirm its existence, which experts say would be bigger than the discovery of the Higgs boson, and physicists have just made the case that another new particle could be waiting to be discovered, by showing that the existence of a mysterious new particle, which they're calling Particle X, could explain a significant conundrum in physics: where the heck all the missing lithium in the universe went to. What's interesting about this is, like the discovery of the Higgs boson, the Particle X discovery could be greater than that, and with the LHC, there's been so much speculation that surrounds it, while the mainstream science community says it's nothing more than a large particle accelerator. There are those of us who are suspicious, given the fact that there were strange clouds over the region, and it's not the first time. Paranormal activity is amplified since the LHC turned on. There have been earthquakes and tsunamis, like what happened in Japan and again with Nepal. Maybe it's linked, maybe it's not. I personally believe that. I don't care really how crazy it sounds at this point. There definitely seems to be something up with it, and the Ghostbusters movie that's coming out really seems to coincide with this, because again, there's this machine that is going to amplify paranormal activity. So it's interesting that Hollywood always puts out films that go with real events, like what they did with The Martian, and then they announced that there was water on Mars, and we see this again and again. Also, in that region, at the beginning of the month, I talked about the ritual that was done at the Gotthard Tunnel and how they were worshiping Pan, the horned goat god. There was also a film that CERN put out a year ago, and they deemed last year the year of light. Just looking at the logo, it's 3 6s, they have Shiva outside, and the lists can go on and on and on. So, in other news, there was an attack in Turkey. 3 suicide attackers killed at least 41 people and wounded 230 more at Istanbul's main airport on Tuesday night, in the latest in a string of terrorist attacks in Turkey, a NATO ally once seen as a bastion of stability, but now increasingly consumed by the chaos of the Middle East. Hours after the assault, Prime Minister Binali Yildirim of Turkey said that the early indications pointed to an operation carried out by the Islamic State, but as of early Wednesday, the group had not claimed responsibility for the attack. The attack began shortly before 10 p.m. Tuesday, Turkish officials said, when 2 gunmen opened fire with automatic weapons at a security checkpoint outside Istanbul's Ataturk airport, one of Europe's busiest. They then detonated their explosives, setting off 2 fireballs. A third attacker set off explosives in the parking lot. Turkey has faced a string of terrorist attacks over the past year, including several in Istanbul, as it confronts threats from both the Islamic State and Kurdish militants fighting a war with the Turkish state in the southeast. I remember back in March covering the Ankara car bombing, and the Middle East has always been a volatile region, but every time something like this happens, a terrorist attack or a mass shooting, we have the talking heads from the mainstream media, and then the politicians come out and they have some kind of agenda that they want to push. So, not too surprised about this. There's also news that there could be a decade-long global food crisis. Experts who participated in the simulation included officials from U.S. State Department, the World Bank, and Cargill. The simulation involved a global food crisis brought on by food price and supply swings amidst burgeoning population growth, rapid urbanization, severe weather events, and social unrest. The model they created begins in 2020 with a healthy economy, but as food prices climb due to climate change, agricultural production is affected. The simulation shows the crisis getting worse as droughts and heat waves strike around the globe. By 2024, heat and drought hit the European Union, Russia, and Ukraine, while subsidizing elsewhere, triggering a food price spike, reaching 395% of long-term averages, and a global economic slowdown, Motherboard reported. So an interesting thing about this is that there is definitely a famine coming. If we look at the drought in California and how it's spreading westward, food prices are going up. Every time I go to the grocery store, I notice produce, fruit is going up. The shelves are getting slimmer. They also pointed to population growth being another factor, which again, I don't believe in this idea that there's too many people on the planet, but it's something that is pushed. This is another reason why many are giddy about abortion and sterilizing certain population groups, which is wrong, but it pushes this idea that we need depopulation. They talked about rapid urbanization and then severe weather events, as well as climate change, which I do believe climate change is a real thing, but the cause of it is not what the mainstream media is telling you. It's actually caused by HAARP modifying weather. The LHC has a lot to do with the changes, as well as some of it is judgment. And they mentioned social unrest, which is interesting because that is something that the elite really want, is social unrest in any form possible. So whether it's done through a race war or it's done through a war of classes, they really want to divide and conquer. But the end result is to get us to push for Agenda 2030. They say if we go with that plan, then much of this can be solved. But if you look into Agenda 2030 and this sustainable development, there's a lot of heinous things in it. There was also the Supreme Court ruling on the Texas law for abortion, and in a dramatic ruling, the Supreme Court on Monday threw out a Texas abortion access law in a victory to supporters of abortion rights, who argued it would have shuttered all but a handful of clinics in the state. The 5-3 ruling is the most significant decision from the Supreme Court on abortion in 2 decades and could serve to deter other states from passing so-called clinic shutdown laws. So it's not too surprising that they ruled against the law. Our government favors more liberal views, and again, I don't believe in either party or being conservative or liberal, but what I've noticed is they have constantly gotten conservative evangelicals' hopes up with these ideas that we're going to reverse this law, we're going to stop this law. Then they turn around and they slap them in the face, and then it helps them feel like, well, if they just get a Republican in the White House, everything will change, which it really won't. And so this is another reason why people are flocking to politicians like Donald Trump, unfortunately, which he is not a man of God, yet I see so many people calling him a man of God, and I'm like, where are the fruits for this man being a man of God? He is not the lesser of two evils between him and Hillary. They are both two evils, and there is no lesser of two. So with this ruling, the Daily News tweeted out an insensitive tweet. They wrote, "Celebrate the hashtag SCOTUS ruling. Go knock someone up in Texas." Which, it's one thing to be pro-choice and to be happy about, I guess, women's rights to decide what they want to do with their bodies, which I completely disagree with. There is another human being inside of you that you're carrying. To make jokes about going to knock someone up just so they can get an abortion is just disgusting. And Planned Parenthood likes it because they make a lot of money off of those who get abortions. It helps keep the population down, and just looking at Margaret Sanger, some of the disgusting things that she said about children, the racist things that she's talked about eugenics. If you ever have time and you don't know about it, then look it up. I'm not going to spend all day on it, but it always gets me whenever I mention it. Those who are pro-choice, pro-abortion, they'll be like, no, she didn't say that, or she didn't mean it like that. And it's like, really? then it seems pretty blatant to me. The Satanic Temple is also making their rounds, and they're launching a pro-abortion crusade. So Satanic Temple is constantly coming out of the woodworks, and they're going to continue to come out. They're going to expand their membership, and the Satanic Temple is to deliver an invocation at Pensacola City Council in July. InWeekly received the following press release. We have confirmed with the City Council Executive Don Crayer, he wrote, David Sahur with the Satanic Temple will be providing the invocation. A representative of the Satanic Temple, West Florida, TSTWF, will deliver the invocation of the Pensacola City Council. That group has also been recognized as an official chapter of the Satanic Temple, a national organization. TSTWF is an atheistic group, but invokes the example of the mythical Satan for his encouragement of free will, knowledge, and rebellion against dogmatic authoritarianism, especially in government circles. They have been active promoting reason, self-determination, separation of church and state, and religious freedom. So it's interesting to see again that, like the man who's running for a seat in Senate in California, here we have so-called atheists who believe in the mythical Satan and all he represents. Really, they're Luciferian because they believe that Lucifer is the hero and that he gave free will and knowledge, and he rebelled against this dogmatic authoritarian God. But if you just follow the path of Lucifer, everything is fine. So I really wouldn't call that atheism, even if you say you don't believe in an actual devil. It is Luciferian in nature. Pope Francis also said that Christians owe homosexuals an apology, and he couldn't have said it at a better time following the Pulse nightclub shooting, as well as it being Pride Month. And President Obama designated a new national monument at the historic site of Stonewall Inn in New York City. With it, we're also seeing a push for the Equality Act bill. If H.R. 3185 is passed, it amends the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to include sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity among the prohibited categories of discrimination or segregation in places of public accommodation. So there won't be any more talk of transgender bathrooms. There won't be any more talk of religious freedom or what a personal business owner will do. It'll be over from that point. And we've seen a rapid move to really change the landscape of this country when it comes to LGBT rights, and the Pulse nightclub shooting factors in, since it's the deadliest mass shooting in American history. What was interesting about it is that, one, there was the death of 22-year-old Christina Grimmie a day before, and even her death has a lot of sketchy things surrounding it. The band that performed before was Before You Exit. There was an alchemaic symbol behind her, and she was shot not too far from the Pulse nightclub. With the Pulse nightclub shooting, I've seen a lot of debate here on YouTube of whether it's a hoax, a false flag, it actually happened. Personally, I believe it is a false flag or a psyop of sorts. I will say, though, it's suspicious that there are so many victims or victims' families who happen to have a background in acting, IMDb accounts, YouTube videos of them trying out for shows. So to me, that is sketchy in itself. Of course, if you want to believe that if all is real, it's all just one big coincidence, I guess you can, but to me, it doesn't seem like it's a coincidence at all, given that this happened during Pride Month, so it garners sympathy for the LGBT. It also happened during Ramadan, and the assailant was Muslim, and he pledged allegiance to ISIS, and now they can push for gun control. And we've seen the filibuster, we saw the sit-ins that the Democrats did in Congress, so there's a political agenda behind this, and they're blaming radical right-wing Christian terrorists. I don't agree with radical right-wingers any more than I agree with radical left-wingers, but I will say it's unfair to blame people on the right for these terrorist attacks when the perpetrator of the crime was Muslim. And interestingly enough, just a couple days after, there was a woman who was cooking meth in a Target bathroom of all places, given Target said that they'll allow transgenders to use any bathroom that they want. And immediately when people saw the story about how there was a bomb in the Target bathroom, they took to Twitter to tweet that it was a radical right-wing terrorist that tried to harm trans people when it was just a woman trying to get high on drugs. But you see this eagerness to demonize anyone who claims Christ and to say that they're the real terrorist. And it's just the Antichrist spirit. It's alive and well. With that, interestingly enough, the Bilderberg 2016 group met during the weekend of the Pulse nightclub shooting. So to me, it was a one big smokescreen, and that's why I don't get too hung up on all the details of it. So at the Bilderberg group, they discussed current events, China, Europe, migration, growth, reform, vision, unity, the Middle East, Russia, U.S. political landscape, economy, growth, debt, reform, cybersecurity, geopolitics of energy and commodity prices, precariat and middle class, technological information. So it's interesting that they discussed all of these different issues while everyone's eyes were on Orlando, and that Brexit happened not too long after. I'm not British, so I can't really give my opinion on a personal level, but it's interesting that it was announced the same day that Independence Day was released and they had the London Tower on the cover. Again, things in Hollywood coinciding with real world events. I just don't see that as a coincidence. And I do believe that they're going to tank the economy. And also, I want to say with cybersecurity that most of you probably know that Facebook is not safe. Pretty much you build your own profile for the CIA, but anyone who passes you by on the street, if they have a phone on them and they happen to have a Facebook app and be logged in, it measures who you're walking past, so then later it recommends them to you. That's why some of your suggested friends look familiar, or you might have seen them somewhere, because you actually have, because Facebook is monitoring where you go. I don't usually talk about pop culture, but I couldn't resist mentioning this. So if you saw Kanye West's famous video where he had wax figures of numerous famous faces, then you saw former President George W. Bush, Anna Wintour, Donald Trump, Rihanna, Chris Brown, Taylor Swift, Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, Ray J, Amber Rose, Bruce Jenner, and Bill Cosby all in one bed. And immediately, the first thing I saw was everyone was pointing out the fact that he's showing that Hollywood, there are orgies, that there are sex rituals that take place. Of course, it could be him beefing with some of these people, given he said something about George W. Bush years back, and there's the whole humiliation ritual he did with Taylor Swift. Others pointed to the fact that they were actually breathing, it looked like, so maybe they were clones that they were showing us, synthetic clones, and I do believe cloning is a real thing. What we know about science and what actually there is far more advanced than we could ever imagine, but they're not going to show that to us. I also picked up on the fact that he represented the fact that we have politicians, those in fashion, those in television and film, athletes, musicians, all in bed together, which all of these industries are in bed together. So it was disturbing to see, and of course they passed it off as saying it's just a recreation of Sleep by Vincent Desidero, but still, it was gross to look at. The last thing I want to discuss is this whole ordeal with the animals. And what I mean with the animals is that you had the death of Harambe, the 400-pound gorilla at the Cincinnati Zoo, after a toddler fell into the enclosure and they shot him. He was 17 years old, which, hold on to that number. There was the alligator who attacked another toddler, but this was in Orlando. Again, all these strange things going on in Orlando. And there was Juma the jaguar, who was also 17 years old, during the torch lighting ceremony in Rio. was killed because she escaped her enclosure and she was shot. So I don't know what's going on with the number 17 or with these animals. Maybe it's just all a bunch of random instances, but I found that interesting. And then it makes me think about Cecil the lion last year and all of the controversy that surrounded that because he was hunted and killed. So let me know what you think about all these news stories, and also you guys have given me great suggestions on video topics that I can cover, and I'm working towards getting research done on them. There's also some topics that have come to mind that I'd really like to cover, and I just want to thank all of you again for your continual support and constantly writing me positive comments. It outweighs the few negative comments I get here and there. But when it comes to all of this news that I discussed, don't be afraid. Don't let it upset you, because that's what they want, because it leads to apathy. It leads to the best way to go about it is to be aware, to pray, and also, if you can, share this with others. And to come at someone and try to scare them or try to tell them, you know what, they want a new world order and there's an Illuminati or anything that sounds like a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hat wearer will turn a lot of people who aren't open to the idea off. And there's always going to be those who are in denial. It wouldn't matter if martial law was declared, it happened tomorrow, they would still be in denial about it. But for those who maybe are starting to see that not everything is adding up, just start to point to holes in the mainstream media stories and strike up conversations, get them to question just very few things, and over time you can lead someone to investigate themselves. So hopefully my advice helped and you found this video useful for information. Have a wonderful week, take care, and Yahweh bless you.